family said they didn't need my help, so I stopped helping them. We're sick of you making everything about yourself, Mom announced, sliding across a written agreement on the iPad I'd bought for her. This binds you to sibling duties only. No more pretending to be their mother. Sign it. My siblings, 14 and 16, stood behind her, death staring me. You're not that important, Jasmine. Nobody asked you to do all this. The irony was palpable. My childhood ended at 9 because I became the mother my siblings needed, all while our actual mom was busy, spreading her legs for her boyfriends. Just last week, she asked me when my sister Tara would finally become a woman. She got her period 3 years ago. I locked eyes with each of them, all filled to the brim with entitlement, and signed it with a smile. Well, why didn't you just say so? If you want me to be a sister, then a sister is what you'll get. They smiled at each other like they'd won the lottery. The next morning, I woke up to Mom's victory lap. Everything's already so much better, she told her new boyfriend on speaker. Should have put my foot down years ago. My siblings floated through the house high on their win, eating food I'd prepped Sunday, wearing clothes I'd washed. This is how a real family works, Mom announced to the house, not the Jasmine dictatorship. That's when I decided to give them exactly what they wanted. On Monday morning, I treated myself to my very first Starbucks breakfast, and even got to try the ice roller trend. Meanwhile, Mom discovered the hard way that teenagers don't wake themselves up. My brother Cian missed his first period exam. Tara showed up at lunch in yesterday's clothes. Hair a mess, no breakfast money. Mom got written up at work for being 2 hours late because she didn't know the morning routine existed. By Thursday, the house told its own story. I came home to find my brother wearing his PE uniform to regular classes because every other shirt reeked of BO. Mom was on the phone begging the utilities company for an extension. She didn't know bills had due dates. Hey, Jazz, my brother said casually like we were cool. Quick favor, can you grab me some deodorant when you're out? Sorry, that sounds like overstepping my sibling boundaries. Come on, sis, don't be petty. Petty? I pulled up the agreement on my phone. This specifically says sibling duties only. Shopping for you sounds like mothering. He left and muttered something about me being dramatic. The smell followed him for another week. Saturday was Tara's orchestra recital. I watched from the audience as she walked on stage in a wrinkled, stained dress, the fancy one I usually dry cleaned. Parents whispered. Kids pointed. When her teacher asked Mom afterwards about the dress code situation, I chimed in loud enough for everyone to hear. Oh, we had a family restructuring, I explained cheerfully. I was overstepping by handling her concert clothes. So now Mom's in charge for the first time ever. Isn't that right, Mom? Mom's face went white as other parents turned to stare. We're reorganizing things. She made me sign an agreement, I added helpfully, showing the teacher. I'm not allowed to fill in as their mother anymore. Just a sister. No more Jasmine dictatorship. The teacher's expression shifted from confused to concerned. Tara ran to the bathroom crying while Mom stood frozen, surrounded by judging parents. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Peterson, the guidance counselor. Jasmine, I'm calling about some concerns regarding your siblings' welfare. Multiple teachers have reported, I have no authority over my siblings. They've made that very clear. But you've always handled, no. They've set their boundaries and it's my job to respect them. 20 minutes later, my mom burst into my room with tears streaming down her face. Please, Jasmine. CPS is coming. If they see the house like this, like what? You know what? The dishes, the laundry, the empty fridge, your brother's grades. Wow, sounds like a lot of mothering work. Good thing you're here to help. I'm begging you, just this once. Help me clean before they ring. The doorbell rang. We both froze. The woman knocked. Hello? Mrs. Williams? Child Protective Services. We've received multiple concerning reports. Mom looked at me with pure panic. I smiled sweetly. Through the doorway, I watched the social worker's eyes scan the disaster. Dishes molding in the sink, garbage overflowing, my brother in the same PE uniform from Monday. She stepped through the doorway and her whole face changed. The smell hit her first. I could tell by how her nose wrinkled up. Then her eyes went wide, taking in the kitchen with green fuzzy stuff growing on plates stacked everywhere, and trash bags piled up against the wall with flies buzzing around them. Cian stood there in that same crusty PE shirt from 5 days ago, with huge yellow stains under the arms. The social worker pulled out her tablet right away and started taking pictures of everything. Mom just stood there frozen like a statue while the camera clicked over and over. The woman walked through the living room taking more photos of the pizza boxes on the floor and the mountain of dirty laundry covering the couch. She opened the fridge and stepped back when she saw it was completely empty, except for a moldy container of something that used to be leftovers. Mom finally snapped out of it and started talking real fast. This is just a bad week. We're usually much more organized than this. The social worker turned to her with this look that said she wasn't buying it. Mrs. Williams, we've received multiple reports from your children's school over the past 2 weeks about ongoing concerns. She pulled up something on her tablet. Your son has been wearing the same clothes for days. Your daughter showed up to her recital in inappropriate attire. Both children have complained of hunger to their teachers. Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I need to speak with each child separately, starting with Jasmine. She pointed to the dining room table that was actually clear because I'd been doing my homework there. Mom started to follow us, but the woman held up her hand. Privately, Mrs. Williams. We sat down and she gave me this soft look. Jasmine, I understand there's been some changes in your household recently. I pulled out my phone and showed her the agreement saved in my photos. My mom made me sign this 2 weeks ago. Her eyebrows went up as she read through it. She forced you to sign this? I nodded. She said I was making everything about myself, and that I needed to stick to sibling duties only. The woman typed notes on her tablet. What exactly were you doing before this agreement? I took a deep breath. Everything. She looked up at me. Can you be more specific? So I started listing it all out. I woke them up every morning at 6:30, made breakfast, packed lunches, made sure they had clean clothes, helped with homework every night, cooked dinner, did all the laundry, paid the bills online. Because mom doesn't understand the computer, scheduled their doctor appointments, went to parent-teacher conferences when mom was too busy. The social worker's fingers flew across her tablet screen. How long have you been doing all this? I did the math in my head. Since I was 9. She stopped typing. 9 years old? I nodded. Mom had a new boyfriend who didn't like kids around, so she was gone a lot. The woman asked about specific things, and I told her everything. How I taught Tara about her period when she got it because mom didn't even notice. How I had to forge mom's signature on permission slips because she never remembered. How I learned to cook from YouTube videos because we couldn't afford takeout every night and mom only knew how to make cereal. She asked to see Tara next, and my sister came in with her hair all tangled and wearing a shirt with food stains down the front. The social worker asked her how things had been lately, and Tara just burst into tears. I'm so hungry all the time, she sobbed. Mom doesn't buy groceries and I don't have lunch money and the only thing I know how to make is cereal, but we ran out of milk. She told the woman about the recital and how everyone laughed at her dress. Jasmine always made sure it was clean and pressed, but now nobody does it and mom didn't even know it needed to be dry cleaned. She admitted she didn't know how to work the washing machine or the stove, or even how to properly wash her hair because I'd always helped her with everything. Cian came in next, looking annoyed like this was wasting his time. The social worker asked him about his clothes situation. Yeah, I've been wearing this for a while, he shrugged. I don't know how to do laundry. She asked him to explain and he got defensive. Nobody ever taught me, okay? Jasmine always just did it. He told her about failing his exam because nobody woke him up and how mom didn't even know what classes he was taking. She tried to help with my math homework yesterday, but she didn't know what algebra was. The social worker asked about meals, and he said they'd been eating a lot of cereal and whatever snacks were left from before. I used the last of my birthday money on McDonald's yesterday. Finally, it was mom's turn and she went in there with her head high like she was gonna fix everything. We could hear parts of it from the living room. The social worker asking about schedules and mom not knowing what time school started. Questions about the kids' teachers and mom couldn't name a single one. Medical information, and mom didn't even know Tara's allergies, or that Kian needed glasses. Then mom's voice got louder. This is all Jasmine's fault. She's being vindictive because I made her sign that agreement. The social worker's voice stayed calm. Mrs. Williams, regardless of what Jasmine is or isn't doing, you are the parent here. Mom kept going on about how I was trying to make her look bad, but the woman cut her off. Can you tell me your son's grade level? Your daughter's shoe size? When their last dental appointments were? Silence. The social worker came back out and made several phone calls right there in front of us. Yes, we need immediate intervention, she said to someone. The home is uninhabitable. There's clear neglect. The children don't have adequate food or clothing. Mom started crying and grabbed at my arm. Tell them you'll help. Tell them this is just temporary. I looked at her calmly. You made me sign an agreement, remember? Within an hour, 2 more CPS workers showed up with clipboards and cameras. They went through every room taking pictures and making notes. They found the bathroom with black mold growing in the shower and toilet that hadn't been cleaned in 2 weeks. They documented the empty fridge, the overflowing trash, the mountain of dirty dishes. One of them found Tara's bloody underwear in her room from when she didn't know what to do during her period this week and just left them on the floor. They asked her about it and she started crying again, saying she didn't know how to handle it without me. The case supervisor arrived in a black SUV and looked at all the documentation. She was this older woman with gray hair who looked like she'd seen everything. After reviewing all the photos and notes, she turned to Mom with this serious expression. Mrs. Williams, based on what we found here today, we're placing both minor children in emergency protective custody. Mom fell to her knees, sobbing. Please, no, I just need more time to figure things out. The supervisor shook her head. Ma'am, your children are living in unsafe conditions without adequate care or supervision. The supervisor's words hung in the air for maybe 2 seconds before Mom collapsed onto her knees. She grabbed at the supervisor's pants and started sobbing these ugly, wet sounds that made everyone uncomfortable. The supervisor stepped back and motioned to the other workers who immediately went upstairs. I could hear them pulling suitcases from the hall closet and opening drawers in my siblings' rooms. Tara ran after them, screaming that they couldn't touch her stuff, but one of the workers gently blocked her path and explained they were just packing some clothes. Kian stood frozen in the living room doorway, like his brain couldn't process what was happening. His face went from confused to angry to scared in about 10 seconds. The workers came back down with 2 small bags that looked pathetic considering they held everything my siblings would have for who knows how long. Tara was full-on crying now with snot running down her face and her whole body shaking. She kept looking at me like I was supposed to fix this, but I just sat there with my hands folded. Cian finally snapped out of his freeze and started arguing with the supervisor about how this was all a misunderstanding. She calmly explained that the decision was made and they needed to come with her now. Mom suddenly lunged at me and grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. Please, Jasmine, just tell them you'll help. Her face was inches from mine and I could smell the coffee on her breath. Tell them you'll take care of everything like you always do. I gently pulled her fingers off my arm one by one. You made me sign an agreement that I wouldn't parent them anymore. She started shaking me and screaming that I was being cruel, but the supervisor pulled her away. The social worker turned to me while the others were dealing with Mom. Jasmine, since you're over 18, you're not required to come with us. But do you have somewhere safe to stay? I nodded and told her I'd already arranged to stay with my friend Sarah and had been planning to move out anyway. She looked relieved and handed me her card in case I needed anything. The workers started walking Tara and Cian toward the door, and that's when everything exploded. Tara spun around and screamed at me that this was all my fault. You did this on purpose! Her voice was so high it cracked. You wanted us to get taken away. Kian just stared at me with this look I'd never seen before. It was like he finally understood that actions have consequences and he didn't like it one bit. They loaded them into a black SUV while Mom ran after them begging for one more minute. The supervisor had to physically block her from getting in the vehicle. I watched from the window as the SUV pulled away with my siblings' faces pressed against the back glass. Mom stood in the driveway for another 20 minutes just staring at where the car had been. I packed my own bag and called Sarah to come get me. Her mom picked me up an hour later and didn't ask any questions when she saw my puffy eyes. That night, I sat on Sarah's bed while my phone buzzed nonstop. Mom had called 17 times and left 8 voicemails. The first 3 were her screaming that I'd ruined everything. The next 2 were her crying and begging me to come home and help her get them back. The last 3 switched between blaming me and apologizing and then blaming me again. I turned my phone off and tried to sleep, but kept seeing Cian's face when he finally understood what was happening. Sarah's mom made me breakfast the next morning and was just setting down pancakes when we heard pounding on the front door. Mom was standing there looking like she hadn't slept with her hair sticking up and yesterday's makeup smeared under her eyes. I know she's here. She pushed past Sarah's dad and found me in the kitchen. You're coming home right now and we're fixing this. Sarah's dad stepped between us and told her she needed to leave. Mom started screaming about how I was her daughter and she could make me come home. Sarah's mom calmly picked up her phone and said she was calling the police if Mom didn't leave immediately. Mom looked at me one more time with pure hatred before storming out. She slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. 2 days passed before I got a call from Mrs. Peterson at the school. Jasmine, I heard about what happened and I wanted to check on you. Her voice was warm and concerned. I also want you to know that I'm proud of you for protecting yourself. She told me the school had counseling services available if I needed them, and that they would support me through this. She mentioned that several teachers had been worried about my siblings for weeks, and were relieved someone finally intervened. 3 days after that, I got an official notice about a family court hearing to determine temporary custody. I spent the morning printing out copies of the signed agreement, screenshots of Mom's texts over the past weeks, and photos I'd been taking of the house getting worse. I organized everything into a folder and put on my nicest clothes. The courthouse was downtown in this old building that smelled like floor wax and old paper. I got there early and sat outside the courtroom watching other families go in and out. Mom showed up 15 minutes late wearing the same wrinkled shirt from 3 days ago. Her hair was greasy and pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had bags under her eyes and kept checking her phone like she was waiting for someone. I realized her boyfriend must have bailed when things got serious because she was completely alone. The bailiff called us in, and the judge was this older woman with gray hair and glasses on a chain around her neck. She reviewed the CPS report first, reading parts out loud about the condition of the house and the children's statements. Then she asked Mom about her parenting capabilities. Mom started strong, saying she'd been overwhelmed but was ready to do better. The judge asked her specific questions about Tara's medical needs. Mom went blank and couldn't even remember what medications Tara took for her allergies. The judge asked about Cian's learning accommodation plan that the school had sent home multiple times. Mom didn't even know he had one. The judge looked at Mom for a long moment before turning to the bailiff and asking him to bring Tara and Cian into her chambers. They both stood up looking confused and followed her through the heavy wooden door behind the bench. Mom kept wringing her hands and looking at me like I could somehow fix this. 20 minutes passed with just the sound of the courtroom clock ticking. When the door finally opened, Tara came out first with red eyes and wouldn't even look in my direction. Cian followed behind her looking pale and shaken, like someone had just told him Santa wasn't real. They sat back down in their seats, and the judge took another 5 minutes writing notes before she finally spoke. She explained that based on the home inspection, the children's statements, and Mom's clear lack of basic parenting knowledge, she was ordering both kids to remain in foster care. Mom would need to complete a 12-week parenting course and individual therapy sessions. She'd also have to pass regular home inspections before the court would even consider returning custody. Mom started sobbing so loud the bailiff had to tell her to quiet down. Right in the middle of the judge explaining the visitation schedule, Mom's phone started ringing. She fumbled to silence it, but I could see her work's number on the screen. The phone rang again 30 seconds later. The judge told her she could step out to take it if it was an emergency. Mom answered in the hallway, but we could all hear her through the door. Her boss was telling her that her excessive absences over the past 2 weeks meant they had to let her go. She tried explaining about the court case, but they said she'd already used up all her sick days and vacation time. Mom came back in looking like she'd been punched in the gut. The judge wrapped up by setting the next hearing date for 3 months out and dismissed us. I walked out first and was heading to the parking lot when I heard someone calling my name. A woman with graying hair and Mom's same nose was walking toward me. It was Mom's sister, the aunt I hadn't seen since I was maybe 10. She said she'd heard about everything from a cousin and came to see if it was really as bad as people were saying. She told me she had no idea things had gotten this bad and felt terrible for not checking in more. Her house had a spare bedroom and she wanted me to come stay with her. I thanked her but explained I needed to focus on my own life now after spending 9 years raising my siblings. She nodded like she understood and handed me a piece of paper with her phone number, saying to call if I changed my mind. Mom walked past us without saying anything, just shooting me a look full of hate. A week went by and I was at my job at the bookstore when my coworker mentioned seeing Kian at the grocery store with some older couple. She said he looked miserable and was arguing with them about something. Later that day, I got a text from one of Tian's friends saying they were in different foster homes on opposite sides of town. Tian was apparently struggling with all the rules like set bedtimes and chore schedules. The friend said Kian kept complaining about having to ask permission for everything when I used to just handle stuff without making it a big deal. 2 days after that, I got an email from Tara's orchestra teacher. She wanted to let me know that Tara had to drop out of the program because her foster family lived 45 minutes away from the school. The teacher wrote that she was really sad to lose such a talented student and wondered if there was any way to work something out. I wrote back explaining I wasn't Tara's guardian anymore, and she'd need to contact CPS about it. The teacher responded saying she understood, but it was such a shame because Tara had real potential. That weekend I was doing homework when Mom called me crying. She'd just finished her first parenting class and couldn't believe how much she didn't know. They'd spent 2 hours just on child development basics, and she realized she didn't even know what was normal for a 14 and 16-year-old. She said the instructor asked everyone to share their morning routine with their kids, and she was the only one who didn't have one. She begged me to help her understand some of the stuff they were teaching, but I told her that defeated the whole purpose of the classes. She hung up on me. I started focusing on my own life for the first time since I was 9. I got more hours at the bookstore and started putting money aside for college. I found out I could still apply for spring admission at the state school and started working on my application essays. One of my coworkers mentioned a support group for people who'd been parentified as kids, and I decided to check it out. The meeting was in a church basement on Tuesday nights. There were 8 other people there, all different ages. The facilitator had us go around and share a little about our situations. One woman talked about raising her 4 younger brothers while her mom worked 3 jobs. A guy my age described taking care of his disabled sister since he was 7 because his parents couldn't handle it. Another girl had been managing her family's bills and appointments since middle school because her parents didn't speak English well. When it was my turn, I told them about the agreement and everything that happened after. Nobody looked shocked or judged me for letting my siblings go into foster care. The facilitator said what I'd experienced wasn't normal, and it wasn't my fault. She explained that parentification is a form of abuse even when it doesn't feel like it. Hearing other people's stories made me realize how messed up my childhood actually was. They all talked about the guilt they felt when they finally stopped taking care of everyone else. One woman said it took her years of therapy to understand that she deserved to have her own life. The group gave me books to read and websites to check out about recovering from parentification. That same night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number asking if I could let him into the house to grab his stuff since Mom wasn't answering her phone. The message said it was Mom's boyfriend and he just needed his work clothes and laptop. I stared at the message for about 2 seconds before blocking the number completely. 3 weeks crawled by with me settling into a routine at my friend's house, going to work at the bookstore, attending the support group meetings, and actually sleeping through the night for once. Then on a Tuesday afternoon while I was making myself a sandwich in my friend's kitchen, I heard loud knocking at the front door. My friend's mom answered it and I heard Cian's voice, desperate and shaky, begging to talk to me. He stood there in dirty clothes with a backpack that looked way too heavy for him, his eyes red and puffy from crying. He started talking fast about how he couldn't take the foster home anymore, how they had all these rules about screen time and chores and homework checks, how they made him go to bed at 10 every night like he was still in elementary school. He kept saying I understood him better than anyone, and begging me to let him stay just for a few nights until he figured something out. My friend's mom looked at me with this mix of concern and confusion, while Kian kept pleading, saying he'd sleep on the floor and wouldn't eat much and would help with chores. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and dialed the CPS emergency number they'd given me at court. Cian's face went from hopeful to shocked to angry as he realized what I was doing. He tried to grab the phone from me, but my friend's mom stepped between us. The CPS operator took down all the information and said someone would be there within the hour to pick him up. Cian sat on the front steps, refusing to look at me or talk to anyone while we waited. The social worker who showed up was the same one from the initial investigation, and she gave me this small nod of approval as she guided Cian to her car. She mentioned quietly that both kids were having a hard time adjusting, but were finally getting real therapy and support services they'd never had access to before. She said Cian had been acting out a lot at his placement, but that was pretty normal for kids who'd never had structure. After they left, I threw up in the bathroom and cried for 20 minutes. A week later, I got a call from Mom sobbing about her home inspection. The CPS worker had shown up to check if she'd made the required improvements to get the kids back. Mom said the worker took one look at the kitchen with dishes still piled up and food going bad on the counter and started writing notes immediately. The bathroom had mold growing in the shower that Mom didn't know how to clean properly. She'd tried to do laundry but left wet clothes in the washer for 3 days and they smelled awful. The worker asked to see the kids' rooms, and Mom hadn't even made their beds or picked up the clothes from the floor. The judge extended the foster care placement for another 3 months minimum. Mom kept crying about how unfair it was, how she was trying her best, how nobody taught her these things. I was at the grocery store the next Saturday buying ramen and frozen pizza when I turned the corner and almost ran my cart into 2 of Mom's friends from her book club. They looked at me like I was actual garbage, whispering to each other loud enough for me to hear about how I destroyed my own family and put those poor kids in foster care just to be spiteful. One of them said Mom had told everyone at church how I'd refused to help when CPS came and deliberately made things worse. They walked away shaking their heads and muttering about ungrateful children. That same week, my friend's mom sat me down at their kitchen table with a laptop and a folder full of papers. She showed me how to open a checking account online, explaining about minimum balances and overdraft fees. and how to use the mobile app to deposit checks. She helped me fill out the FAFSA for college financial aid, something I didn't even know existed because Mom had never mentioned it. She taught me how to build credit with a secured card and showed me websites for finding apartments and understanding lease agreements. She made me practice writing checks and balancing a checkbook, even though she said most people don't use them anymore. She explained health insurance and car insurance and renter's insurance, all these adult things Mom never thought to teach me. 2 days later, I got a letter forwarded through CPS from Tara. Her handwriting was messier than usual and the paper had tear stains on it. She wrote that I was selfish and cruel and that I'd ruined her life on purpose. She said I could have fixed everything but chose to destroy the family instead. She wrote that she hated me and never wanted to see me again. She said her foster parents were mean and strict and didn't understand her like I did. She blamed me for missing orchestra and falling behind in the school and not having any of her stuff. The letter hurt worse than anything Mom had ever said to me. My therapist at the support group helped me understand that Tara was processing trauma and grief, and that anger was easier than admitting she'd been wrong. She explained that kids often blame the safe person rather than the one who actually hurt them. 3 weeks after that, Mom called crying again because she'd gotten an eviction notice. Without my income from the bookstore helping with rent, and without me keeping track of when bills were due, she'd missed 3 months of payments. The landlord was done giving her extensions. She couldn't understand how the bills had piled up so fast, or why the late fees were so high. She said she'd tried to make a budget, but the numbers didn't make sense to her. She'd been spending money on takeout every night because she didn't know how to meal plan or grocery shop properly. Her sister, my aunt who'd offered to help me before, agreed to let Mom move in temporarily. 2 months into the whole mess, I got a letter about mandatory family therapy. The judge had ordered all 4 of us to attend a session together with a court-appointed therapist. The letter said it was part of the reunification process, and attendance was required. The session was scheduled for the following Thursday at the courthouse. Mom showed up looking different from I'd seen her in years. Her hair was actually brushed and styled. She wore clean clothes that matched, and she looked sober for once. She'd lost weight, and her eyes were clearer. She sat across from me in the waiting room but didn't try to talk. When we got called in, the therapist had us sit in a circle with her between Mom and me. Tara and Cian sat on the other side looking uncomfortable and angry. The therapist started by asking Mom to share what she'd learned in her parenting classes. Mom talked for 10 minutes about child development and age-appropriate expectations, and how she realized she'd never known what kids actually needed at different stages. Then the therapist asked her directly about my role in the family before everything happened. Mom got quiet and stared at her hands for a long time. Finally, she looked up at me with tears running down her face and said the words I'd waited 9 years to hear. She admitted that she'd forced me to be the parent, that she'd stolen my childhood, that she'd been selfish and neglectful and wrong. She said she understood now that what she'd done to me was abuse, even though she hadn't hit me or meant to hurt me. She said the parenting classes made her realize how much damage she'd caused all of us. It was the first time she'd ever taken real accountability for anything, but sitting there listening to her, all I felt was empty because it was way too late for apologies to fix what she'd broken. The therapist turned to Tara next and asked her to share how she was feeling about everything. Tara's face crumpled and tears started rolling down her cheeks as she looked at me with this mix of pain and anger that made my chest tight. She wiped her nose on her sleeve and told the therapist she missed me so much it hurt, but she also hated me for letting everything fall apart. She said she didn't understand why I couldn't just fix things like I always did before. The therapist nodded and explained in this calm voice that Tara's anger at me was actually meant for Mom, but it felt safer to be mad at me. She told Tara that I was just a kid too when I started taking care of everyone and that wasn't supposed to be my job. Tara kept crying harder and harder until she was making these little gasping sounds. The therapist handed her tissues and waited for her to calm down before turning to Cian. My brother sat there picking at a hole in his jeans and wouldn't look at anyone. The therapist asked him 3 times before he finally mumbled that he knew what they did to me was messed up. He said he knew I was basically raising them while Mom did nothing, but he didn't want to give up having someone do everything for him. He looked at me for maybe 2 seconds and said sorry, but I could tell from his voice he was mostly just sorry his easy life was over. The therapist wrote notes on her clipboard for what felt like forever before looking up at all of us. She recommended we all continue with separate therapy before trying to be a family again. She said Mom needed to prove she could actually parent, and I needed time to figure out who I was without taking care of everyone. Mom nodded and promised she'd do whatever it took to get the kids back while I made it clear I wouldn't be coming back no matter what. The session ended with the therapist scheduling individual appointments for everyone and reminding us this would be a long process. 2 weeks after that session, I got home from my job to find a thick envelope from the state university waiting for me. My hands shook as I opened it and read the acceptance letter offering me a full scholarship based on my grades and the essay I'd written about my situation. I sat on my friend's bed staring at the letter because I never thought I'd actually get to leave and start fresh somewhere new. My friend's mom found me crying and hugged me while I showed her the letter. She helped me fill out all the housing forms and even drove me to campus for orientation day. The scholarship covered everything including books and meal plans, which meant I could actually focus on the school instead of working 3 jobs. Meanwhile, Mom kept going to her parenting classes every Tuesday and Thursday at the community center. She called me once to say she'd passed her first test about child development milestones. I could hear in her voice she was proud of herself for learning what temperature to wash clothes at, and how to check if meat was cooked through. 6 weeks after the kids got placed in foster care, she passed her second home inspection at my aunt's house. The judge reviewed all her progress reports and approved supervised visits with Tara and Cian starting the next Saturday. Mom showed up 15 minutes late to the first visit because she got lost finding the supervision center. The social worker had to remind her twice about the rules, like no discussing the case or making promises about when they'd come home. Tara spent most of the hour showing Mom her math homework, while Kian played on his phone and barely talked. The second visit went better with Mom remembering to bring snacks, but she forgot Tara was allergic to peanuts and brought peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. The third visit, she showed up on time with safe snacks, but couldn't help Kian with his history project because she didn't know anything about the Civil War. She kept mixing up dates and which side won what battles until Kian got frustrated and stopped asking. After 2 months of supervised visits, the judge reviewed everything again and decided Mom could have the kids on weekends. They'd stay with their foster families during the week where they had structure and homework help, but spend Friday night through Sunday with Mom. The first weekend, Mom picked them up 2 hours late because she forgot what time school ended. She didn't know Tara had orchestra practice on Saturdays or that Kian had a job at the grocery store on Sunday mornings. 3 months passed with this schedule, and Mom slowly got better at remembering their schedules, though she still messed up sometimes. The judge decided the arrangement was working well enough to continue. The kids had stability during the week with foster parents who knew how to help with homework and get them places on time. August came and I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and a backpack for college. My friend's parents drove me to campus and helped me carry my stuff up to the 3rd floor dorm room. My roommate was already there unpacking what looked like her entire bedroom from home, including string lights and throw pillows. She complained that her mom had already called 4 times that day to check if she was settling in okay. I just nodded because I couldn't relate to having a mom who cared that much. That first week of classes felt like stepping into a different world where nobody knew my story. I could just be a normal college kid worried about picking classes and finding the dining hall. 3 weeks into the semester, I got a notification on Instagram from Tara. She'd sent me a photo of herself standing next to a washing machine with a caption saying her foster mom taught her how to separate colors from whites. It wasn't much, but I appreciated that she wanted to share this moment with me after everything. I liked the photo and commented with a heart emoji. A month later, Cian messaged me on Facebook asking if I could look over his college application essay. He started typing that he needed help with the grammar, but then stopped and sent another message saying, never mind, because he remembered I wasn't supposed to help anymore. We both sent those crying, laughing emojis, and something about acknowledging how weird everything had become made it feel a little less heavy. 2 months passed with Mom keeping to the weekend schedule and actually showing up on time more often than not. The social worker's reports kept mentioning small improvements like Mom remembering to pack lunches and asking about homework, even if she couldn't help with it. The judge looked over everything at the next hearing and decided Mom could have them for the whole spring break week to see how she handled it. I watched from my dorm room as Tara posted photos of them at the park, and Cian shared a video of Mom trying to make pancakes from scratch instead of a box. The pancakes looked terrible, but they were all laughing about it, which was something I'd never seen before. When the week ended without any major disasters, the judge signed off on full reunification starting after the school year ended. Mom had to keep going to therapy and parenting classes, but the kids would be living with her full-time at my aunt's house. My aunt had basically taken over making sure bills got paid and groceries got bought while Mom focused on learning how to actually parent. 3 weeks after they moved back, I got a text from Mom asking if I wanted to come for dinner on Saturday. I stared at my phone for 20 minutes before typing, yes. The drive to my aunt's house felt weird because I'd never been there as just a visitor before. When I walked in, the smell hit me first. Actual food cooking instead of takeout containers everywhere. The living room had toys scattered around, but not the disaster zone it used to be. Mom came out of the kitchen wearing an apron I'd never seen before with flour in her hair. She'd made spaghetti from a jar with garlic bread from the freezer, but the table was set with real plates and everyone had napkins. Tara showed me her report card after dinner and pointed to each grade like they were trophies. 2 C's, 3 B's, and 1 A- in art class. She explained how she had to actually study now instead of me doing everything, but her foster mom had taught her how to use flashcards. The grades weren't as good as when I did her homework, but she'd earned every single one herself. Cian pulled out his phone to show me photos of the grocery store where he worked stocking shelves 3 nights a week. He'd saved $400 already, and found a used Honda he wanted to buy once he had enough. His manager said he was one of the most reliable workers they had, which made him proud in a way I'd never seen before. After dinner, Mom asked if we could talk outside while the kids did dishes, which was apparently their new chore schedule. She sat on the porch steps and started crying before she even said anything. She told me her therapist had helped her understand what she'd done to me, and how she'd stolen 9 years of my childhood. She said she was sorry for making me be the mom when I was just a kid myself trying to survive. She admitted she didn't even remember half of my childhood because she was too busy with boyfriends and partying to pay attention. Her hands shook as she explained how the parenting classes made her realize all the basic stuff she never knew, like checking homework folders and making doctor appointments. She said watching other parents in the class made her see how much she'd failed all of us, but especially me. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there listening to her list all the things she wished she could take back. When we went back inside, Tara was waiting by the door looking nervous. She asked if she could hug me, and when I nodded, she wrapped her arms around me tighter than she ever had before. She whispered that she was sorry for being so mean, and for not understanding what I'd been doing all those years. Her foster mom had explained that I was just a kid too and shouldn't have had to raise them. She said she understood now why I had to let everything fall apart, and thanked me for being brave enough to save myself even when it meant they had to suffer. She pulled back and showed me a bracelet she'd made in therapy with beads that spelled out sister. She'd made one for herself too, so we could match like real sisters were supposed to. Cian came over and did that awkward guy thing where he punched my shoulder lightly and said thanks for making them all grow up. He admitted he knew what they were doing to me was wrong, but he liked having someone else handle everything so he didn't have to. He said losing everything made him realize how much I'd been carrying and how unfair they'd all been to expect it. 6 months had passed since that first CPS visit, and nothing was perfect, but everything was different. Mom knew how to make 5 different dinners now, even if they were all simple things like tacos and spaghetti. The kids did their own laundry and homework without anyone standing over them. I was taking classes I actually wanted and making friends who didn't know my whole story. Mom would never win any parenting awards, but she was actually trying for the first time in their lives. My siblings had learned to function like normal teenagers instead of expecting someone else to do everything. And I'd learned that protecting myself wasn't selfish, but the most necessary thing I'd ever done for all of us. Well, that's gonna wrap it up for me today. Kinda makes you stop and think about things, huh? Appreciate you hanging out and wondering through it all with me. Subscribe for more content like this.